Okay, so welcome everyone to today's webinar, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy Wednesday mornings to join us for the first in a series of our cybersecurity webinars. My name is Ashley McCloskey and I'm the Marketing Manager here at SoConnect, and today we're joined by Brett Ellis, who is the Head of Marketing and Sales at SoConnect, and Mark Stewart-Buddery, who is one of our external cybersecurity specialists. So we will not be turning our cameras off purely for the purpose of people's bandwidth and being able to hear us properly. So for those joining us today who aren't really aware of who SoConnect are or what we do, I just wanted to give a short intro to our services. So we're a managed IT provider dealing with businesses of all sizes across not just the UK, but across the globe. We provide customers with a suite of services from secure cloud solutions, modern workplace technology, and industry-leading connectivity and voice products. So the purpose of today's webinar is simply just an information share. We want to show you what cybercrime looks like in 2021 and the sophisticated tactics that cybercriminal gangs now employ, and how businesses just like yours can prevent up to 99.3% of the most common cyber attacks and breaches. So during the webinar, you will be in listen-only mode, and we'll be holding a Q&A session at the end, or feel free to add your questions in the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screens during the webinar, and we can answer these at the end. So I'd now like to pass you to Brett, who will begin today's webinar.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ashley. And just a warm welcome to everybody that's taken the time out of their busy schedules, as Ashley said, to join us today. My job really is going to be to have a look at the type of cybercrime that exists and some of the incidents that have occurred and what you should be aware of. So effectively, the first part is me just giving you a bit of an overview of what should be considered by yourself as a business or as an individual, and then Mark will give us some of the solutions and talk around what we can do in order to, as Ash has mentioned, reduce cybercrime by 99.3%. So just moving on, we'll see here that the number of cyber attacks and activity in 2020 broke all records. Effectively, the name of it, cybercrime, is a criminal activity that targets or uses your computer or your computer network or your networked devices. It then attacks those devices in a way that would cost you money or take your information. In 2020 alone, the cost of cybercrime amounted to $1 trillion. Okay, so if you look at what it's going to look like in 2025, according to the current trend, it would cost the world 10.5 trillion annually. Now, if you consider that against the money factor against, and if it was measured as a country, right, cybercrime would be the world's third largest economy after the US and China. Machine learning and artificial intelligence and 5G has been used and leveraged by cybercrime in a new way at the moment. You know, with where we're at the moment and the advances in technology, it's just really a dangerous place in terms of cybercrime. Okay, and we have to be considering methods of securing our business against these hackers and these criminals. So if we look at the next screen, the internet sort of tells us cyber criminals look like this person with the hoodie in a dark room with bright screens. which is almost like comparing, heaven to some fluffy angels. The reality is what cybercrime is in fact made up is the image on the right there, which is organizations similar to yours, bigger sometimes. For the most part, these are massive organized syndicates with server farms that actually work day and night, 24/7, 365, with the sole purpose of annexing your data and attacking your business. It's indiscriminate. They're not particularly looking for you. They're just looking for weak links in the chain. So if your business is one of those businesses that don't have a level of protection that it should have, these guys, these syndicates are going to find that and exploit it. They use the dark web to coordinate and sell this data. If you're not familiar with the dark web, it's just an alternative to the internet that you currently are very familiar with. However, it is a place where the cyber criminals coordinate their efforts, and they use this as a marketplace for your data, for your passwords, for your private information. But it is often the case that these sort of groups live on your organizational network for months at a time. So literally, they'll find a way of working or getting into your IT network, so that sit on one of your endpoints, one of your computers in your network. That could be, just a private computer that's accessing your network, or it could be your server. It could be any one of your endpoints. What they do is they lodge a piece of code into that environment, and they then monitor your environment and start encrypting files as times go. Now, they can be there for up to 2 months or more without people even realizing that they are there. And the reality, the picture on the right, is cybercrime is organized. It's not individuals trying to steal your particular information. It's large syndicates with lots of money behind them. When we reflect on the fact that they would be the 3rd largest economy, they have the money to invest and systematically, in a very organized way, find ways of attaching your data and then making that available, or driving a ransomware attack your way where they would lock your business down. So we have to consider how we address that. So, I mean, we've all are part of this COVID-19 and the pandemic, but it's definitely led to significant changes in the way we work. So that's an increased remote working, with people using their personal computers, their personal, so that's your own devices being used at home in some cases. In other cases, it's company devices being used at home, but not having the correct infrastructure and security in place to protect those. So what we'd expect to see is a definite direct security and user monitoring that has become harder for businesses to implement over their extended devices that are out in people's homes, etc. So on that level, just in 2020, we saw a decrease down in that security, that direct security, from 40 to 35%. So considering the data size, that 5% is a massive amount of businesses that in fact, are doing less direct security. And this is a direct result of the new hybrid workspace where people are working at home and businesses don't have that direct access to the gear that they would normally have. Some other stats to mention would be that 83% versus 88%. So in 2020, it was down by basically 5% again of businesses not having up-to-date malware protection. Okay, so that's things like antivirus tools that should be updated on a regular basis to be effective, are in fact down in 2020 when everything else, cyber crime, is on the up significantly. And on top of that, it's a further, in terms of network firewalls, which is, you know, a tool that's used to protect your business from at the face of your business, at the public face, where it interacts with the internet, any public interface. 83% of businesses had that in place at the beginning of 2020, and that's down to 78%. So you can see there was a definite trend downwards in terms of security over 2020, and that's, you know, largely due to, for the most part, how this pandemic has made it difficult for businesses to secure their environments. With staff working at home, there are more endpoints for organizations to keep track of, and so how does one go about keeping track of these? Mark will give us a bit more detail on that in a while. Right, so what we can see, or the estimation is that due to COVID-19, digital transformation has been accelerated forward by 7 years. So that would be, you know, if I look back to just before COVID, we were working hard to convince companies that collaborative tools like Teams and Horizon were very good for the business in order to generate flexible workplaces through SharePoint and Office 365. And that now has just been absolutely accelerated and become a necessity for most businesses. Obviously, some businesses are still have their servers and their physical hardware on premise and are dialing in through VPN, which is also something that needs to be secured. But definitely the trend has been to move towards that hub, that flexible workplace where you have ease of remote working. Right, so in that same same scenario, cybercrime have also accelerated their versions of attacks based on my previously mentioned AI and machine learning, and all of these tools that have been used by these syndicates to come up with sophisticated methods. So whilst digital transformation has been accelerated by 7 years, in tandem with that, the cyber criminals have done the same thing. So it's one of the main trends that was identified through the research on businesses that were affected by security was the fact that the crime initially was introduced through a lot of staff being unaware or uninformed about what was required on a security level. So it's imperative that we are looking at informing our staff members about the hazards and the threats of cybercrime. An easy solution as well would be multi-factor authentication, which is a good security step that could be considered. Right, so if we move on, and we look at how this has impacted business in terms of a few more stats, 39% of UK businesses had at least one cyber attack. So that's 1 in 4 businesses had an issue with, sorry, that's 4 in 10 businesses that had an issue with some type of cybercrime. If you look at 21% of those businesses lost money, data, or other assets as a result of that. So that's 1 in 5 businesses actually had a significant loss of money or data, okay? And if we look at that final stat there, 13,400 is the average cost to a large business. Now, if we look at medium to smaller businesses, you'd look at 8,460 is the average cost that you'd expect to incur if you are in fact affected by the cybercrime. So it's not significantly different to the larger businesses. It's quite close. So the next question that I get asked quite often is, well, how do you actually get to that number? Well, the next slide shows effectively what you could expect in terms of the type of damages that you would be faced with. So without going through all of these and just having a look at that, because I'm sure you can read them, but literally it's things like stolen money or fines imposed by the ICO, which we'll see in the following slides, or it could be damage or distraction to data. You know, one of the main things is the loss of productivity. So if you get attacked by, say, for example, a ransomware attack, that means that your business is unable to trade over that time. And then it's obviously the remediation costs in order to restore your environment back to where it should be, okay, prior to the event, and then looking at investigating that. So a bit of detail on what makes up the majority of these most common cyber crimes that you might encounter as a business. An overwhelming percentage, you know, 83% is pretty much phishing attacks. So that's really staff receiving fraudulent emails or being directed to fraudulent websites, and as a result, entering in information and sharing or entering in passwords that they shouldn't have done. So this is sort of the low-hanging fruit that you would expect the cyber criminals to be attacking, or these syndicates that we previously showed you. In fact, Google has registered over 2 million phishing sites as of the beginning of this year. Okay, so that's a massive amount of problems out there to avoid. Following phishing attacks, you would see impersonation scams. That's sitting at 27%. And then, although it's the lowest percentage at 9%, it's still significantly important, because this 9% where you would see viruses, spyware, malware, things like ransomware attacks, these things, they constitute 9%. However, these are also the events that cause the most amount of damage and financial loss to businesses. So it's really important that as a business you consider defending against that. Okay. In terms of the staff awareness and training around these 3 areas, I previously mentioned it in the slide just before. It's really important that your staff understand and are aware of phishing attacks and impersonation scams and the way that these things can potentially arrive at your business. So there's really two sides that we look at. It's the technical side, it's the software and hardware that you would need as a business, and then it's your people and how aware they are and how how informed they are when it comes to the way that cybercrime affects or is instituted in the business. Right. So if we look at the next slide, as it's populating there, there's other types of cybercrime to be aware of, which, you know, just to pop through that, you know, it's things like denial of access. These are used to make online service unavailable or take a network down, which overwhelms the network, and it leaves large amounts of the network infected. And at that stage, botnets are created and they deposit malware onto the user's computers. And then the hackers use this to hack into the system, your system, once the network is down. Then I mentioned botnets, which botnets are networks from compromised computers that are controlled externally by remote hackers, by these syndicates. And then they're used to act as malware and perform malicious attacks against your business. Okay, so this is just cyber or these syndicates using, they could be using components of your network to attack other people. It's really quite disconcerting. Another one to be aware of is social engineering. This involves criminals making direct contact with yourself or somebody in your business, and this is usually by phone or email. And interestingly, it's quite often the executives or the directors in the business that are victim to this. You know, it's our busy schedules, and we are constantly going from one thing to the next, and through the social engineering, they're able to catch you off guard just at that wrong moment. So that would be things like then asking for certain details. So it could be one director asking one of the staff for some bank details, and the staff member goes, all right, no problem, and sends it through. Just a few examples that you may or may not be aware of, but I thought to start with a really recent cyber event has been the Irish Health Service, which was hit by a ransomware attack. That was actually only a few weeks ago, and it caused the entire system, local and national, to be locked down and for appointments to be cancelled or rescheduled. And the attack is very similar to the UK NHS attack, which happened a few years ago in 2017, which had an estimated cost of, they say, £92 million. Okay. Now, I mean, to give you an idea, the Irish Health Services had to literally revert to paper appointments, taking appointments by notepad, due to their system being hacked and locked down. Another one was British Airways. Now, to give you an idea, I mentioned that these criminals can sit on your system for a period of time. In this event, British Airways, their payment portal was hacked, and what the hackers did was, over a period of 2 months, siphoned off 308,000 customers who were absolutely unsuspecting. They were going onto the BA website, they were booking out, signing off on the payment page, entering their credit card details, but they were basically giving that straight over to the hackers, because the hackers had code written on that page which was siphoning all of that information out. And this happened over a 2-month period. So it was absolutely a major breach. Now, initially, the ICO investigated this and found that it was a lack of security put in place. They already had the functionality through Microsoft, which they had not activated. And as a result, British Airways, because of omitting to do something that was already all there for them to do, they were fined initially 193 million, and that later came down to 20 million, which is to date the largest fine that was imposed by the ICO. But I know these are big examples, but this is the reality. Businesses that have lots and loads of money to secure themselves are at the end also victim to this. And then the third one there was ASA, right? These are the attackers posted some of the stolen customers' data on their website and offered a 20% discount for early payment before the deadline. So if a payment was not made by the deadline, so this is a typical ransomware attack, they increased the ransom to $100 million. It's unclear if they landed up paying these hackers and these. However, there hasn't been any data leaked since that attack in March. So by assumption, it's very likely that there was a payment made there. Although we don't have the final details on that, it's just to show you how these criminals can get hold of your data. Right, so this is my last slide. It's really just a look at the 5 technical areas or 5 steps you can take as a business in order to reduce your exposure to cybercrime. Okay, so it's all automated in the background there. The first thing is to use a firewall. Okay, that protects all of your devices, particularly those that connect to the public or other untrusted Wi-Fi networks. All right. The second one there is controlled access. Right. So if you look at your business and you look at the staff members in your business, you should get to a access control point of view or place where your staff members have only the access that they need, no more and no less, in order for them to do their jobs effectively. So that would be auditing that and obviously removing access that's not required by those people those staff members who do not need that access. The third one is security updates. So this should be on all devices that your business relies on. So that could be personal devices that are accessing your company's data, or devices that are owned by the business. It's both, because wherever a device interacts outwardly and has or where your data of your business resides, that machine or that endpoint needs to have those security updates in place. Step 4 would be to ensure that secure configurations are always in place. So that's checking the settings of your new devices and software with the aim to make changes that increase your level of security. A good start on this would be to consider removing any functions, accounts, or services that you don't require. So that could be old portals that you aren't using as a business anymore. Just really doing a proper audit and making sure that everything you use as a business should be there and is configured according to the correct configurations. So you could consider things like two-factor authentication over there, or multi-factor authentication, to ensure that those devices are configured correctly. And then lastly, it's malware protection. So malware is short for malicious software, and every device and server needs a robust antivirus solution to prevent them from being affected by malicious malware or software. So that's at minimum an antivirus tool that covers off and can be used across multiple devices and is continuously updated. So it's looking at your environment and ensuring that you've got a best-in-class antivirus tool over there. Now, all of these steps, if all of these steps are in place and you've got the firewall and the controlled access and security updates, secure configurations, and the malware protection, these will allow you to attain Cyber Essentials certification. This is a government-backed scheme that can be used to reduce your chance of cybercrime by that 99.3%. So it's a massive reduction in risk that you can introduce into your business. And my learned colleague, Mark Stewart Buttery from Brigantia, one of our security partners, and he's the product specialist over there, will be giving us a bit of insight into Cyber Essentials, which is effectively a certification, as I say, that once you have this in place, it ensures and monitors that you've got these 5 areas, these 5 technical areas covered, and that your business is in the best possible place. So without further ado, I want to thank you for your time and for enduring my dulcet tones. And I welcome any questions at the end of it. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Mark, and just thanks so much and have a fantastic day further.
Superb. Thanks, Brett. Great presentation. It's really interesting, actually. It doesn't matter how many times I go through things like this and you see the stats and the figures and how much cybercrime costs. Seeing $1 trillion and then that estimated at being 10 trillion in only like 4 years' time is insane. It's no wonder cybercrime is absolutely not going to stop anytime soon. Not until we can bring down the amount of money they're making, because they're just making so much. Yeah. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Thank you, as Brett and Ashley have already said, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I am going to go over what Cyber Essentials is. There's 3 different sections to this. So we're going to discuss Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, and then IASIMU. Now, IASIMU are the governing body behind all of this, and I'll explain a bit more about them towards the end. So first of all, Cyber Essentials, what is it? So it is a government and NCSC collaboration, and this was first introduced to the marketplace, or to the UK, and around the 5th of June 2014, roughly. And before that, they obviously spent a period of time developing and coming up with something to help UK businesses and UK in general really protect itself against cybercrime. We already had lots of different guidelines for things like GDPR or something similar, health and safety. There was lots of advice and kind of things for new businesses and the current businesses, existing businesses, on what they should do to protect themselves in those areas. But there wasn't really anything to help advise people on this new, very real threat, which is cybercrime. So that is why this was produced, or this is why this was created. Now, the real purpose behind this was for absolutely everybody in the UK to want to take it on. It was designed so that it wasn't just available or affordable to the large enterprise businesses who have got millions upon millions upon millions of pounds in their budgets specifically for cyber protection. This was designed for the one man or the one lady bands who don't have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds to put towards cyber protection. This is who this was aimed at. It just so happens that it's just as relevant for a small business as it is for a very large business, which we'll discuss again in a moment. But that was the purpose of it. It was not designed just for a very specific area. This was designed for the entirety of the UK. And it was a bit of a shame, really, actually, because when that happened, very soon after the release of Cyber Essentials, the government turned around and said, We're going to mandate this for government and local government. Right, that happened almost immediately from its release. So what tends to happen there is most of the UK heard, brilliant, I'm not working for government, I'm not applying for tenders, I'm not working within the local government in any way, shape or form, so I don't need it, which was such a shame because that is not the idea of it at all. And it's even more of a shame when you consider how effective it is. So when they first launched this, even the creators thought it was only going to be around 80% effective. Luckily for them, the University of Lancaster decided as one of their academic studies through one of their term years to try and prove exactly how effective this was. Whether it was less, whether it was more, didn't matter. They wanted to prove exactly how effective it was. And luckily, it turned out to be 99.3% effective. And we used the exact figure because it obviously is a very exact process. So that is what achieving and maintaining Cyber Essentials can do for your business. All right. Just to recap on a couple of points, I know Brett already mentioned it in the previous slide, but the 5 controls are firewall, secure configuration, password protection, malware protection, and security update management. So none of those things are sort of reinventing the wheel. They're very basic controls. And obviously Brett and his team will be on hand to discuss those in more detail for you. So who has to have Cyber Essentials? Because although it's not just for the people that are told they have to have it, it is of course important for us to know who does have to have it by law so that we're prepared and we can help our customers be prepared. So it's mandated for anybody working within government, local government. So that can be whether you're applying for a tender or you're possibly part of their supply chain. It's also for any school. So if any school that is relying on ESFA funding, as an example, has to have Cyber Essentials, and the NHS. So anybody that's part of the NHS, whether it be their supply chain, whatever it may be, if you are required to meet the NHS toolkit, you have to be Cyber Essentials certified. All right. We talk about, we haven't talked about it yet, but we will. We talk about snapshot in time security. So what that basically means is once you achieve a certificate, it's usually a snapshot of that time. So it usually be a point or one day of that year, you are proving that you're compliant. And that then tends to be it until we renew something. So we call that a snapshot in time or snapshot security, which we do need to start avoiding because it wouldn't be right for us to assume that on day one, if we've achieved Cyber Essentials, then all of those controls, all of those 5 controls will be in place and working exactly as we would like them to be on day 365 when we're looking to renew this. So that gives hackers, and all the examples that Brett has just shown us, 364 days potentially to work their magic or their evil or whatever you want to call it in trying to gain access to your business, to your data in whatever form they choose to do that. So if we are in a position to monitor this framework, not just one day of the year, but every single day of the year, that is the only way you can be sure you're getting that 99.3% protection. All right. Now, SoConnect will of course be on hand to talk you through all of that, exactly how that works, what's on offer here, but just to talk about some of the benefits. So you are going to get from SoConnect the opportunity or the option to monitor this framework on a daily basis rather than kind of once a year. You're going to be put into a fail-free environment. You're going to get full support. There's lots of things that SoConnect are going to be able to do for you. So do have that conversation with them post this webinar because quite frankly, the service they're able to offer is fantastic. Let's go on to Cyber Essentials Plus. All right. So Cyber Essentials Plus is effectively following the exact same framework of Cyber Essentials. Okay, so when we talk about firewall, secure configuration, password protection, malware protection, security update management, they are the same principles, whether it's Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. So you're not actually being requested to do more, but the biggest difference falls that Cyber Essentials is done via a questionnaire format. Now that can be completed by yourselves as the business, or it can be completed by SoConnect as your service provider, or it can be a combination of the two. Right? You are allowed to work on that together. Now, Cyber Essentials Plus, you are not allowed to be involved in that in any way, shape, or form. All right. So that information has to be found and obtained by an independent third-party auditor. Okay. And the difference then being is rather than that questionnaire, that auditor is going to run scans and reports and various different things to find fact, basically, to prove that what you've written in that questionnaire, what was supplied in that questionnaire is actually true. Okay. Now, when we consider that for a moment, where something is done via a self-assessment and something is done by a third party, I think it would be fair to assume Cyber Essentials Plus is now being considered the more meaningful accreditation, because it is based on fact rather than the information somebody has supplied to that questionnaire, which is why this is now being requested left, right, and centre, for lack of a better expression. So we've talked about government, local government, NHS and schools. For example, there are strong rumours that next month, in fact, there's going to be an announcement of some sort that the government and local government at some point in the future will need to meet the requirements of Cyber Essentials Plus as the new minimum. There's also fact already that the NHS and education from 2022 are going to have to meet Cyber Essentials Plus. We've also got businesses like Vodafone, Barclays, Virgin. They're all using Cyber Essentials to secure their supply chains. And we can only imagine how far that supply chain stretches. And we're already seeing a lot of cases where they are asking their supply chain to get Cyber Essentials Plus certified. I've got clients who are coming to me and saying their biggest clients, so when we consider your customers, they're requesting you to have Cyber Essentials Plus as a minimum before they'll continue trading. So we are going to bump into this more and more. As this year progresses, I think it's quite unlikely any business that is trading in the United Kingdom will not bump into this in one way or another. So get yourselves future-proofed, if you like, and get having discussions with SoConnect about how you can get yourself Cyber Essentials Plus certified. All right. Beyond the fact that some businesses where you may trade currently or want to continue trading may require this in the future, this also, in a world where cybercrime has now become something that people are concerned about and something people are attuned to, this enables you to prove without prompting that you are taking cybercrime very seriously. You are doing what you can to protect your business, and not just your business, your client's data, because that's what's obviously important here, protecting that client data, stopping your business from getting one of these horrible ransomware attacks where you're left with this ultimatum of, and the business you've spent time and energy setting up is, you either pay for it, and even if you pay for the ransomware, as Brett will probably confirm, you're not guaranteed to actually get that data back. In a lot of cases, when you settle a ransomware, they still just disappear with your money and your data. So it's a genuinely a really horrible situation to find yourselves in, and one that we hope none of you ever will. And doing something like this puts you in the best position to ensure that. All right. As part of that process, there are scans involved. Of course, there's likely to be remediation work once a scan's taken place. If there are any faults, SoConnect are obviously able to identify that before you're put into this kind of fail situation. And in a lot of cases, if you were to do this away from SoConnect, when you needed that remediation work rescanned at a later date, you would have to repurchase that rescan. SoConnect are able to offer your rescans completely free of charge. All right. They're also able to offer the Cyber Essentials Plus process in a 100% remote environment, and they can again uniquely put you in a fail-free environment. And again, speak to them how they do this, but they can make sure it is impossible for you to fail Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. All right. Again, just looking at point 5 here, we talk about ongoing compliance monitoring. This is still very relevant for Cyber Essentials Plus. So it doesn't matter whether it's Cyber Essentials Plus. We need to be in a position where we're monitoring this every single day of the year, not just for one day of the year. Okay, there's a really important point here in our fight against reducing that cybercrime, and again in our fight in reducing the money they're making from this cybercrime. So the last thing I just wanted to mention before we jump into Q&A is IASIMU. So IASIMU stands for the Information Assurance for Small and Medium Enterprises. So what a lot of you may not know is when Cyber Essentials was first introduced, there was 5 governing bodies who were responsible, or God, whatever you want to call it, for controlling, monitoring, making changes, implementing Cyber Essentials. All right, but that caused confusion for people like yourselves going onto the internet trying to find out anything about it. You were seeing 5 different opinions about the same subject, so it wasn't a very helpful scenario for anyone to be in. So the government decided last year, actually in April, we're going to consolidate down to one governing body, and that is IASIMU. All right. When we've already talked about, so they are responsible for Cyber Essentials Plus, and the full GDPR module. They are one of the main reasons that compliance monitoring is so important. So anybody that does hold a certificate, whether it's by choice or whether it's by kind of demand from your supply chain or from government or mandate, you are then likely to be audited at some point during that year, or some point during the time that you hold that certificate. Right. So having an ongoing compliance monitoring system in place enables you to keep on top of everything, as I said, 365 days of the year, every 15 minutes. So in the event of an audit, you are best placed to have that information ready. So you're not at risk at failing. You're not at risk at losing your certificates. All right. They also have a GDPR readiness module, which I'm not going to talk to you about any more than that. But if you are interested in obviously exploring how compliant your business is versus the GDPR guidelines, then SoConnect are in a position to manage that for you. And just want to talk about continuous change, really. So the way this works is, as I said, IASIMU work very closely with the government and the NCSC. So any changes that are made, IASIMU are kind of releasing those to us every April. So with the new threats that are going on, threats are changing and evolving every single year. It's IASIMU's job to obviously continuously monitor that progress and then adapt Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus and everything else in the appropriate way to make sure we do our best to stay ahead of it. All right. So in essence, Cyber Essentials Plus is based on a framework we need to monitor every single day, and doing so can provide our businesses a protection of 99.3% against all common cyber threats. All right. So last thing to say is thank you all so much for listening to all of us, Brett, Ashley, and myself. We do hope that you found obviously this presentation useful and information useful for your business. Anything you do wish to discuss, please do pop your questions now into the question section. Depending on how you've got your screen set up, leave a bit at the bottom side or top of your screen where you can do the Q&A button and type those questions away. All right, Brett, Amy, Ashley, I'll hand back over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. It was very informative, and I hope our audience found that to be the same. I think what's important is just to understand you have the certification, which Mark has kindly given us a good overview of, and then it's the 5 technical measures in order to achieve that certification. So that was the slide with the 5 circles. Now, in order to do that, it's really just a audit that we would do with you that is quite a quick audit. It's just understanding what you currently have in place and identifying what you don't have in place against those five technical areas. And once we establish that, it's then putting a plan together in order to get that into your business, and then you are able to tick the relevant blocks in the Cyber Essentials. And then obviously the Cyber Essentials Plus is slightly more than that, where you'd have to have an external audit carried out, but both of which we can certainly assist with.
Okay, I can't see any questions coming in, so I think we should probably just end the webinar there. And just to say, I think there's a few SoConnect customers on here today, so if you have any questions about Cyber Essentials or cybersecurity, please feel free to drop your account manager an email or call them. And if you're not a SoConnect customer already, we have our details on screen right now. And just to say that you will receive a follow-up email from attendants of the webinar with the recording and a guide on the 5 steps that Mark's already discussed today. So thank you for your time, as Brett has already mentioned, and I hope you have a good rest of the week.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to Mark, and thank you to everybody for being on here. And we look and welcome any of your questions going forward. Our contact details are there. We have recorded this and we'll make it available to all of you again. And we look forward to chatting to you in the future. Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.